House will come to order. The Pledge of Allegiance this morning will be led by Sophia Sheldon, Jason Novacek, Benta Sila, and Yoseline Luna from Silverthorne Elementary in Silverthorne, Colorado.
Please join us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Cole, please take the roll.
Representatives Becker, Buck, Buckner, Conti, Corum, Court, Del Grosso, Dorr, Duran, Everett, Exum, Fields, Fisher, I got you, Foote, Garcia, Gardner, Giroux, Janal, Representative there you go, Hamner, Holbert, Hollinghorst, Humphrey, Joshi, Kagan, Kraft-Tharp, Labuda, Representative Labuda, somewhere, up, all right, Landgraf, okay, Lawrence, Lebsock, Lee, May, McCann, McLaughlin, McNulty, Melton, Mitch Bush, Moreno, Murray, Navarro, Nordberg, Pabon, Peniston, Pedersen, Primavera, Priola, Rankin, Rosenthal, Ryden, Sane, Salazar, Representative Salazar, Schaefer, Scott, Salazar is absent. Singer, Sonnenberg, Stevens, Swam, Zabo, Representative Zabo.
Here every morning this week.
Tyler,
Gets in trouble.
Vigil, Waller, Williams, Wilson, Wright, Young, Speaker Farinina.
What you doing? You know, with me, you get what you see. There's going to be no change.
He was probably on his way down. All right, 65.
With 64 members present, 1 absent. Okay, finally he made it down from the rafters. 65 present. 0 absent, 0 excused. A quorum is present. Representative Buckner.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move that the reading of the Journal of April the 23rd be dispensed with and that it be approved as corrected by the Chief Clerk.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Already started voting. All those opposed, no. Well, we could lose it, and then there'd be discussion. Now the motion is adopted. Announcements and introductions. Representative Tracy Kraft-Hart. And Representative Giroux.
Members, if we could just have your attention for just a moment. So you'll see that on your desk that you have T-shirts that say "Day Without Hate." So tomorrow, as we told you last week, we'll be doing a resolution for Day Without Hate, and we are requesting that you wear these T-shirts tomorrow, except
when we're doing the memorials, if you would not wear it then. But in support of the students that are behind the Day Without Hate, we'd appreciate your participation.
Representative Kraft-Hart.
Thank you. And gentlemen, those that are gentlemen, you need to wear your T-shirts over your shirts and your ties, per the rules. So you can't just wear the T-shirt without your shirt and tie underneath. And, right?
Correct, Representative Kraft-Hart.
Thank you.
Representative Giroux.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And those of you that aren't gentlemen, you need to do the same thing.
All the women have to wear ties too tomorrow. No.
So that's a very good point, Representative Giroux. Thank you very much. So these T-shirts were provided to us by students at Stanley Lake High School, and they will be here tomorrow. And we will be talking about this initiative that they are doing throughout Colorado and throughout high school students to promote a Day Without Hate. So I really want to encourage you, please join us. Let's do a Day Without Hate and support these students and the work that they're doing. Thank you.
Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the Business, Labor, Economic Workforce Development Committee, we're going to meet at 1:30. We will hear Senate Bill 152 and Senate Bill 166, and we will begin promptly. Thank you.
Representative Navarro.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request to be excused today at 1 o'clock and all day tomorrow. I have received permission from both parties.
Representative Navarro will be excused as requested. Representative Fisher and Janal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, we are privileged today to have two teams from the first robotics competition in our chambers today. And I wanted to recognize the team from my alma mater, Poudre High School's Team Alpine 159. They are seated over here on my left. The team members are Alex Giuliani, Sarah Graves, Jackson Jones, Owen Davidson, Lena Beyer, and Nathan Steketee.
And I'd also like to
Janelle.
recognize students from Fossil Ridge High School, and they are the Ridge Biotics 4388. John Miller, Matthew Drysdale, Emily Malnadali. I'm sorry if I got that all messed up.
You
and
probably
AJ
did, but that's okay.
Oranan. So welcome, please, guys.
Yeah, let's recognize these robotics competitors in our chambers.
Thank you.
Representative Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And for those of you who weren't able to make it out to the regional competition this year, I highly recommend that you adopt a team in your own districts to support the FIRST robotics competitions. FIRST stands for Inspiration and Recognition of Science and Technology. It's believe me, it's a STEM program on steroids, and the work that these students do throughout the year to build their robots and compete in regional competitions is truly inspiring, and I hope that you will adopt and support a team in your own districts.
Thanks.
Thank you. Representative Hamner. Oh, Representative Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I almost forgot, we have in the chamber, or in the Capitol today, these two teams have brought robots from their recent regional competition at DU last month. They will be out in between the elevators in front of room 271 demonstrating their robots and talking about FIRST robotics and what all the competition requires. And so I would really appreciate it if you go out and chat with the kids and look at their robots and learn about FIRST Robotics. Thank you.
Representative Hamner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and colleagues. If I could have your attention, in addition to the fabulous students from Silverthorne Elementary who did the pledge this morning, we have the entire 5th grade class from Silverthorne Elementary here with us today. Please join me in welcoming them.
Further announcements and introductions. Seeing none, Madam Majority. Oh, sorry, I do see one. Lord Kagan.
Thank you, you commoner.
That's Speaker to you.
Members of the Judiciary Committee, we've added one bill to our rather lengthy calendar this afternoon. It is House Bill 1390 by Duran and Gardner, and be ready for House Bill 1390.
Okay, now, Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House proceed out of order for consideration of HJR 1019.
Seeing no objection, the House will proceed out of order for consideration of HJR 1019. Mr. Kohler, please read the title to HJR 1019.
House Joint Resolution 1019 by Representatives Gardner and Joshi, also Senators Cadman and Herpin, concerning the commemoration of the El Paso County Medical Society and the volunteers of the Medical Reserve Corps of El Paso County.
Representative Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, colleagues, if I can have your attention this morning on a very busy day. Mr. Speaker, I move HJR 141019 and ask that it be read at length.
Whereas the El Paso County Medical Society Board of Directors recognized the need to work with the entire community to integrate all healthcare professionals into disaster planning for the community. And whereas on September 12, 2001, the El Paso County Medical Society formed the Community Task Force Disaster Response for Health in El Paso County, comprising more than 20 agencies. And whereas the El Paso County Medical Society also sought to ensure the continuation of disaster planning by securing a grant from the Department of Health and Human Services and formed the Medical Reserve Corps of El Paso County, chartering it on September 30th, 2003 as a 501c3 nonprofit organization housed in the El Paso County Medical Society Foundation. And whereas the mission of the Medical Reserve Corps of El Paso County is to prepare non-hospital-based, medically related personnel to ensure the physical, medical, mental, and spiritual well-being of the people and families of El Paso County in the event of a major disaster by supplementing existing emergency medical services when a disaster overwhelms those services. And whereas El Paso County has endured two of the most devastating fires in Colorado history within a one-year period, the 2012 Waldo Canyon Fire, which killed 2 people, destroyed 347 homes, and necessitated the evacuation of 32,000 people, and the 2013 Black Forest Fire, which killed 2 people, destroyed 486 homes, and displaced 41,000 residents. And whereas the Medical Reserve Corps of El Paso County had prepared for this kind of emergency during a training exercise called Up in Smoke, in which participants practiced coordinating with local emergency responders. And whereas the Medical Reserve Corps of El Paso County responded within 45 minutes of being activated for both the Waldo Canyon Fire and the Black Forest Fire. And whereas during and after both fires, volunteers from the Medical Reserve Corps of El Paso County provided medical and behavioral health support at mass care shelters associated with the City of Colorado Springs Office of Emergency Management, the El Paso County Department of Public Health, and the Pikes Peak chapter of the American Red Cross. And whereas the Medical Reserve Corps of El Paso County mobilized 88 volunteers who contributed 1,644 hours of service during the Waldo Canyon Fire and mobilized 56 volunteers who contributed 450 hours of service during the Black Forest Fire. Now therefore be it resolved by the House of Representatives of the 69th General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the Senate concurring herein, that we, the members of the General Assembly, hereby recognize the forward thinking and planning undertaken by the El Paso County Medical Society, its Board of Directors, and its 1,064 physician members who train and prepare for disaster response, and express our appreciation and gratitude to the Medical Reserve Corps of El Paso County and its credentialed and trained volunteers who work in close cooperation with emergency response agencies throughout El Paso County and contributed more than 2,100 volunteer hours supporting victims of the Colorado Waldo Canyon Fire and the Black Forest Fire. Be it further resolved that copies of this joint resolution be sent to Governor John Hickenlooper, the Mayor and City Council of Colorado Springs, the El Paso County Board of County Commissioners, the El Paso County Sheriff, the Colorado Medical Society, and the El Paso County Medical Society.
Representative Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and colleagues, please be seated. Colleagues, friends, citizens of Colorado, the spirit of volunteerism in America, in Colorado, and across our communities is what distinguishes us around the world as a society of people who can do and can do flexibly, instantly in the service of our communities. During the last 2 years, as you know, the Colorado Springs community has had two record-setting disasters, the Waldo Canyon fire and the Black Forest fire. Combined, the toll of those fires stands at 4 dead, over 32,000 acres burned, over 800 homes lost, and 71,000 of our citizens were displaced. Today, by this resolution, we're recognizing the hard work and volunteerism of 144 healthcare volunteers from the Medical Reserve Corps of El Paso County. This is a program operated by the El Paso County Medical Society, which is our local affiliate of the Colorado Medical Society. These physicians, physician's assistants, nurses, behavioral health, and other healthcare personnel volunteered their time and skills to help their neighbors, many of them themselves already having been evacuated and some having lost their own homes. Their work in both of these disasters totaled over 2,100 hours. That's over a year of volunteer medical and behavioral health care. They provided medical and behavioral health support at the mass care shelters, the disaster centers around the community, in the evacuation zone, and in our affected neighborhoods. They were there for our community to support all of us when they learned that their homes had been destroyed, and they accompanied those citizens as they were allowed to return to what was left of their homes, a devastating experience. The Medical Reserve Corps continually trains and prepares, and its volunteers ask for nothing in return. They do this because they are citizens of our community, our state, and our nation. The Medical Reserve Corps of El Paso County started right after 9/11. Our medical society knew that there was a need for this kind of organization that could quickly respond to large disasters and mass casualty situations. It's fully integrated in our community's emergency planning, and they work closely with city, county, and our other regional agencies. They're at the table for all of our disaster planning, and they're a force multiplier. What makes the Medical Reserve Corps of El Paso County stand out is it's driven by the community through community nonprofits. It succeeds because of strong leadership and a compelling mission without direct government funding. And its roster has now over 200 licensed healthcare professionals. As you know, Colorado Springs, like so many of your communities throughout our state, are great. We take care of each other throughout the state and in our communities, and it's a great place to live and work. We wanted to recognize the Medical Reserve Corps, the El Paso County Medical Society, and the Colorado Medical Society in the spirit of volunteerism in meeting community needs without direct government support, but by that of our communities. Thank you.
Representative Joshi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, members, for sharing with me in welcoming and honoring this very elite group from El Paso County. And with that, as Representative Gardner mentioned, what they have done in last 2 to 3 years with different disasters, unfortunately, we have witnessed in El Paso County. So again, I thank all of them for doing what they have done tirelessly. And I thank you all for sharing this moment with us.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, is there any objection to taking a voice vote? Seeing none, we'll proceed in that matter. All those in favor of House Joint Resolution 1019 say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. House Joint Resolution 1019 is adopted. Representative Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We would ask that the current roll call be added as co-sponsors.
Seeing no objection, the current roll call made the co-sponsors of HJR 1019. Representative Gardner or Joshi for introductions.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, I would like to introduce some of these members who are already here. And if you can hold the applause until the end, I would appreciate that too. Gerald Albrecht, MRC of El Paso County Disaster Behavioral Health Coordinator. Barbara Bridgman, RN. Sally Duncan, RN. Frankie Gales, MRC of El Paso County Program Director. Monica Hannon, registered psychotherapist. Dr. Thomas Higginbotham. Gail Newell, Region 8 MRC Coordinator. Lisa Powell, El Paso County Public Health Disaster Preparedness Coordinator. Kenneth Phillips, PA. Dr. Judith Reynolds, MRC of El Paso County Medical Director. Virginia Smith, RN. Mike Ware, El Paso County Medical Society Executive Vice President. Mary Williamson, RN. Barbara Young, MRC of El Paso County Behavioral Health Manager. And Dr. Jane Keep, past President of Colorado Medical Society. And Alfred Gilchrist, CEO of Colorado Medical Society. Welcome, all of you.
Representative Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, members.
And thank you, members, too.
Thank you, Representative Gardner. Thank you, Representative Joshi. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the House proceed out of order for consideration of third reading of bills, final passage.
Seeing no objection, the House will proceed out of order for consideration of third reading of bills, final passage. Mr. Kohler, please read the title to House Bill 1383.
House Bill 1383, Representative Williams, also Senators Talk, Chop, and Uleberry, concerning the required number of physicians that must be provided to an injured employee for selection of a treating physician in workers' compensation cases.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the adoption of House Bill 1383 on third reading and final passage.
Representative Swam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I rise in opposition to House Bill 1383. Members, as many of you know, I am an insurance broker with one of the larger independent insurance agencies here in the city, but we also have a branch office over in the Eagle area. Even though I am licensed to sell work comp, I am by no means an expert in that area, which is a very important issue for the employers of this state. And over the last week or so, the people who in my office who are well versed with this issue have been sort of circulating emails about the issues that are raised by this bill. And what really struck me was the response that I saw from the fellows who work in our Eagle office over in the rural western part of the state, who say absolutely in the rural parts of the state, it's not easy to find extra providers to put on these panels. There are not that many providers over there already, and it will simply make things more complex and, in the end, more expensive. So they, based on their recommendation, I think that this bill simply goes in the wrong direction. I understand that it's not the end of the world, but I think particularly in rural parts of the state, it's going to create a burden for those employers over there. So on that basis, I urge a no vote on House Bill 1383.
Seeing no further discussion, the question for the House is the passage of House Bill 1383 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Giroux. Representative Giroux excused and fined $5. Close the machine with 37 aye votes, 27 no votes, 1 excused and 0 absent. House Bill 1383 is passed. Co-sponsors. Close the machine. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1381.
House Bill 1381, Representative Fields, also Senator Todd, concerning adoption of school closure plans requiring for closing a low-performing public school.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the adoption of House Bill 1381 on third reading and final passage.
Seeing no discussion, the question for the House is the passage of House Bill 1381 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Fisher and Giroux.
Oh, there it is.
Close the machine. With 37 aye votes, 28 no votes, 0 excused, and 0 absent, House Bill 1381 is passed. Co-sponsors. Close the machine. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Concurrent Resolution 1002.
HCR 1002, Representatives Court and Quorum, all Senators Crowder and Schwartz, submitting to the registered electors of the state of Colorado amendments to the Colorado Constitution concerning petition signatures required for citizens to initiate a constitutional amendment in connection with requiring a portion of the petition signatures for the amendment to be gathered from voters who reside in each Colorado congressional district, increasing the total number of petition signatures required for the amendment, and excluding the repeal of an amendment passed prior to 2015 from these petition signature requirements.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the adoption of HCR 1002 on third reading and final passage.
Seeing no discussion, members, this is a concurrent resolution, does require 2/3, so 44 votes to pass. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representatives Conti, Duran, Gardner, Giroux. Close the machine. With 47 aye votes, 18 no votes, 0 excused, and 0 absent, House Concurrent Resolution 1002 is passed. Co-sponsors. Close the machine. Representative Swan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request that my name be removed as a co-sponsor.
Representative Swan's name will be removed as a co-sponsor. Representative Sane.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask that my name be removed as a co-sponsor.
Representative Sane's name will be removed as a co-sponsor. Representative Lebsack.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request that my name be removed as a co-sponsor.
Representative Lebsack's name will be removed as a co-sponsor. Representative Conti.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also respectfully request that my name be removed as co-sponsor.
Representative Conti's name will be removed as a co-sponsor. Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask that my name be removed from this bill as a co-sponsor.
Representative Scott's name will not be will be removed as a co-sponsor. Representative Navarro.
Mr. Speaker, I respectfully request that my name be removed as well.
Representative Navarro's name will be removed as a co-sponsor. Representative McNulty.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I respectfully request that Representative Scott be removed from the chamber.
Sounds like a good motion, Sergeants. Let's get at. No, I'm just. Okay, Mr. Kohler, let's read the title of House Bill 1066.
House Bill 1066 by Representative Vigil, also Senator Stebbins, concerning the amount of a driver's license fee that a rural county clerk and recorder may retain when issuing a driver's license in connection with making and reducing appropriations.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the adoption of House Bill 1066 on third reading and final passage.
Seeing no discussion, a question for the House, the passage of House Bill 1066 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representatives Conti and Stevens. Close the machine with 65 aye votes, 0 no votes, 0 excused, and 0 absent. House Bill 1066 is passed. Co-sponsors. Close the machine. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of the House Bill 1352.
House Bill 1352 by Representatives Tyler and Quorum, also Senators Todd and King, concerning the management of waste tires in connection with making and reducing appropriations.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the adoption of House Bill 1352 on third reading and final passage.
Seeing no Representative Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Under Rule 21C, I request to be excused from voting on this bill.
Representative Moreno will be excused under Rule 21C. Representative Kraft-Tharp.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Under Rule 21C, I also request to be allowed not to vote on this.
Representative Kraft-Tharp will be excused under Rule 21C. Representative Labuda.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish I could be excused, but I've been here 8 years. I think this is the 8th waste tire bill I voted on. One thing I won't miss is voting on waste tire bills. Thank you.
Very well said, Representative Labuda. Seeing no further discussion or anyone who wants to be excused from voting on this bill, the question for the House is the passage of the annual waste tire bill, House Bill 1352. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Fisher. Close the machine with 60 aye votes, 3 no votes, 2 excused, and 0 absent. The annual waste tire bill, House Bill 1352, is passed. Co-sponsors. Close the machine. Really, no one wants to co-sponsor the annual bill. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of the House Bill 1384.
House Bill 1384 by Representatives Pedersen and McNulty, also Senators Zuliberry and Crowder, concerning rigor-based tuition assistance for students in post-secondary institutions.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the adoption of House Bill 1384 on third reading and final passage.
Representative Pedersen, do you want a 21C on this bill?
I get to do my first third reading, so members, I ask for your permission to offer a third reading amendment.
Please explain what you're asking for permission for.
This is just a technical amendment that the bill drafter recommended we pass today to ensure that we have consistency with what we did yesterday.
Okay, is there any discussion? Seeing none, the question for the House is to grant Representative Pedersen permission to offer the third reading amendment. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representatives Conti, Gardner, McNulty, and Priola. Close the machine with 65 aye votes, 0 no votes, 0 excused, and 0 absent. Representative Pedersen is granted permission to offer a third reading amendment. Representative Pedersen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move L007 and ask that you support it.
Seeing no further discussion, the question for the House is the passage of Amendment L007 to House Bill 1384. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representatives Everett, close the machine. With 65 aye votes, 0 no votes, 0 excused, and 0 absent, Amendment 7 is passed to House Bill 1384. We are now back to the motion to pass House Bill 1384 as amended on third reading and final passage. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representatives Buckner, Kagan, Landgraf, Pabon, and Stevens. Close the machine with 60 aye votes, 5 no votes, 0 excused, and 0 absent. House Bill 1384 is passed. Co-sponsors. Close the machine. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1372.
House Bill 1372 by Representatives Conti and McCann, also Senator Marble, concerning unauthorized advertising for adoption purposes.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move for the adoption of House Bill 1372 on third reading and final passage.
Seeing no discussion, the question for the House, the passage of House Bill 1372 on third reading and final passage. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representatives Buck and Ryden. Close the machine with 65 aye votes, 0 no votes, 0 excused, and 0 absent. House Bill 1372 is passed. Co-sponsors. Close the machine. Message from the useless body.
Mr. Speaker, the Senate has...
The remainder of the message from that body will be printed in the journal. Introduction of resolutions.
We did.
I just did that. We got to introduce it first.
Senate Joint Resolution 34 by Senator Toktrop, also Representative Moreno, concerning the Colorado Day of Remembrance of the Armenian Genocide on April 24, 2014.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House suspend the rules for immediate consideration of SJR 34.
See no objection, the House will suspend the rules for immediate consideration of SJR 34. Mr. Kohler, please read the title to Senate Joint Resolution 34.
Senate Joint Resolution 34 by Senator Toktrop, also Representative Moreno, concerning the Colorado Day of Remembrance of the Armenian Genocide on April 24, 2014.
Representative Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move Senate Joint Resolution 34.
To the resolution.
Mr. Speaker, members, I think we should start off with reflecting on a moment of silence. Today, Thursday, April 24th, 2014, is the 99th anniversary of the start of the Armenian Genocide. Members, I would ask that we observe a moment of silence in remembrance of all those who perished in this horrible act.
The House will observe a moment of silence.
Thank you, members. Members, please be seated. Thank you, members, for taking just a few moments out of our day today. I know we have a busy calendar, but it's important for us to take a few moments to pause and reflect on the men, women, and children that lost their lives and were displaced from their homes during the Armenian Genocide. I want to take this opportunity to say particular thanks to my good friend from Adams County, Armin Brown, for involving me in this and for giving me the opportunity to educate myself on this really important issue and this really important piece of history that needs to be remembered, that we need to pause each year just for a few moments and recognize how many people lost their lives in this tragedy. We do have members of the Armenians of Colorado here with us on the floor today, members who, many of which lost relatives in the Armenian Genocide. And I will introduce them after we vote on the resolution. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, is there objection to taking a voice vote? Seeing none, we'll proceed in that manner. All those in favor of Senate Joint Resolution 34, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Senate Joint Resolution 34 is passed. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine for co-sponsors. Close the machine. Representative Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, as I mentioned, we do have members of Armenians of Colorado here with us. If you would stand and allow us to recognize you. Thank you for being here.
Representative Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I just want to again thank the Armenians of Colorado for your advocacy on this issue to make sure that this event is not forgotten and that we take a few moments each year. I know next year is the 100th anniversary, and we need to make sure that we continue to recognize this event in history and recognize the people that lost their lives. Thank you so much for your advocacy.
Thank you, Representative Moreno. Reports of committees of reference.
The Committee on Appropriations, after consideration on the merits, committee recommends the following: House Bill 1139 be amended as follows, and also amended to be referred to the Committee on the Whole fair recommendation. House Bill 1360 be amended as follows, and also amended to be referred to the Committee on the Whole fair recommendation. House Bill 1376 and 1380 be amended, 1382 be amended and referred to the Committee of the Whole as amended with favorable recommendation. The Committee on Finance, after consideration on the merits, committee recommends the following: House Bill 1375 be amended as follows, and also amended to be referred to the Committee of the Whole fair recommendation.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the following bills be added to the top of the special orders calendar for consideration today, April 24th at 9:50. And the bills are House Bill 1385, House Bill 1387, House Bill 1376, House Bill 1360, House Bill 1382, House Bill 1380, and House Bill 1139.
Seeing no objection, the bills listed by the Majority Leader will be added to the top of the special orders calendar. We'll proceed to our next order of business. Second reading of bills, special orders. Representative McCann. Fisher, sorry, I messed up. Representative Fisher.
I move that the House now resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for consideration of special orders.
Seeing no objection, the House will resolve itself in the Committee of the Whole for consideration of special orders. Representative Fisher will take the chair.
The committee will come to order. With your unanimous consent, the bills will be read by title unless there is a request for reading a bill at length. Committee amendments will not be read unless requested, as they are printed and in your bill folders and in your iPads. Floor amendments will be shown on the screen and on your iPads and not read unless requested. Bills will be laid over upon the motion of the Majority Leader, and the coat rule is relaxed. Mr. Kohler, would you please read the title of House Bill 1385?
House Bill 1385 by Representatives Priola and Penniston. Also, Senators Johnston and Rivera, concerning creation of high school academic growth awards to correspond to high school athletic award classifications.
Representative Priola.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I move House Bill 1385 and the State Affairs Committee report.
To the committee report, Representative.
Members, we added a clarifying amendment in the State Affairs Committee to make sure that this doesn't cost any money. Ask for an aye vote.
Just have the majority. Is there any discussion on the committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the State Affairs Committee report. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. Committee report is adopted. To the bill. Representative Priola.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I move L003 and ask that it be displayed.
Okay, amendment L003 has been properly moved and is displayed. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, there was some concern expressed about non-gender neutral verbiage in bottom of page 2, lines 19 and 20. We think L003 addresses that. Ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion of L003? Representative Labuda.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank you, Representatives Priola and Peniston, for paying attention to this, because if you read the language, it is not, the original language is not gender neutral, and I had a concern about that, so thank you very much for correcting it.
Is there any further discussion on L003? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L003. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. L003 is adopted. Representative Peniston, to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And colleagues, this may seem like a small gesture on our part, but we are the ones here that put in place all of the student growth legislation as a statewide issue. And because we do honor high schools in so many ways athletically, it was Representative Priola's idea that we should honor schools academically. And so I'll turn it over to him to explain more.
Representative Priola.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for that, Representative Peniston. I've always observed how, at the collegiate level, we honor schools with national championships, and we also honor schools and members of colleges with terms such as Rhodes Scholar and so on and so forth, as well as Nobel Prize. We rank colleges based on how good they are for their business school, their engineering school, or so on and so forth. And I really my hope was to try to encourage high school kids to be that complete student that not only excels on the athletic field in their physical body, but also tries to excel in their academics and exercising of their mind. I think this is a small carrot, but a carrot nonetheless that will hopefully encourage high school students in the state of Colorado in the coming decade to be that well-rounded student. I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion of House Bill 1385? Representative Giroux.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, I heard the bill. I was subbing for Representative Dorr yesterday in State Affairs, and I heard the bill. I make it a habit never to come down and speak against a bill belonging to a member of my caucus. This is my test. I'll be a yes vote on this, but read it and see what you think.
Is there any further discussion of House Bill 1385? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1385. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no. House Bill 1385 is adopted. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to lay over House Bill 1387 until after House Bill 1360.
Okay, House Bill 1387 will be laid over as requested by the Majority Leader. Mr. Kohler, would you please read the title of House Bill 1376?
House Bill 1376 by Representatives Buckner and Moreno concerning the analysis of information relating to the academic success of public school students based on student placement in different instructional groups of course or course levels.
Who wants to?
Thank you.
Representative Buckner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1376 and the Appropriations Committee report.
To the Appropriations Committee report, Representative Buckner.
Appropriations Committee report has appropriated the funds necessary to support this bill.
Is there any further discussion of the Appropriations Committee report? Seeing none, all those in favor of the adoption of the Appropriations Committee report, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say no. The committee report is adopted. To the bill, Representative Buckner.
I move House Bill 1376 for final consideration.
Is there any, to the bill, Representative Buckner, if you have any comments.
This bill provides an opportunity for schools to get specific information provided by Department of Education. It already has been, they already provide that information. It just points to specific kind of course assignments and gives them opportunity to work.
Representative Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, it's a pleasure to bring with Representative Buckner House Bill 1376 to you. I think some of the most important aspects of House Bill 1376 is that it'll allow us to start having a conversation and to start having a conversation about why students from certain groups may be placed in certain classes. It's an issue that I'm extremely familiar with, having gone to public schools my entire life, to Adams 14 Public Schools, and having gone to a school district that is in the bottom 5 of all school districts in the state. Having personal experience with being in those classes that haven't challenged kids. And so House Bill 1376 will allow us to start having that conversation. We'll provide districts with the data to start thinking about and start working towards challenging kids. Because there's no evidence to suggest that kids can't meet the challenge. We just have to provide them with the opportunity to meet it. I heard in Appropriations Committee this morning, and unfortunately I wasn't there, but I was listening from afar, and thank you, Representative Buckner, for covering that. I heard from afar, though, about concerns that school districts may have with this, that it may just be one more thing. I think the beauty of House Bill 1376 is that it is not an unfunded mandate, that it will go through the Colorado Department of Education, and they will have the opportunity to work with school districts, on this data, to provide them with this data so that information can start influencing school district plans. With that, I ask for an aye vote.
Representative Buckner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to add a couple of things. Essentially, this bill requires that the Department of Ed provide feedback on information that districts are already submitting. And it aligns that information, provides authority for the school district, for the Department of Ed to attach information with regard to 2 separate bodies of data that are submitted by school districts at this point. Courses and performance of students within those courses and how that impacts the groups and whether or not effectively those courses are providing the kind of content that will allow students to demonstrate grade level proficiency. It's a very important aspect of consideration for school districts when designing curriculum and placing students in courses. I, too, ask for an aye vote.
Representative Priola.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I rise in opposition of House Bill 1376. We heard it in education yesterday and had a good discussion. I believe that the sponsor's heart is in the right place, and the fact that Representative Moreno brought up a specific instance of his experience in school. But basically, this bill is spending about $150,000 first year to point out, or to use data to point out to school districts something that I think is apparent to most of us. If you're in honors of English or honors math, you're probably going to do better on whatever test it's being called these days at whatever time you take it. And I'm sure that Representative Moreno, being in honors, was it English? Probably did pretty well on his tests, and those who were not in honors classes, such as myself, probably did fairly bad on the tests like I did. So I really think this is unnecessary taxpayer money being spent and unnecessary paperwork for the districts with really, in my opinion, no return.
Representative Fields.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I stand in strong support of House Bill 1376, and I'd just like to share with you why. You know, there are significant disparities when it comes to certain course levels. We have many of our kids that are being tracked in specific courses, not making them prepared for higher education. So when they find themselves graduating from some of our schools, they don't have the skills that they need to be successful. So what this bill will do, it will help us identify those disparities that are taking place in various schools and come up with a strategy and a plan to make sure that our kids are getting the kind of education they need to be proficient so they can be successful, so they can be able to graduate from college without going through some kind of remediation. They're not getting the kind of course performance levels that they need in some of these courses, so they find themselves inadequately prepared to be successful in college. So I urge an aye vote on House Bill 1376.
Representative Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I join Representative Priola in opposing the bill and ask for a no vote. I've spoken before on different pieces of legislation that it's important for us to remember that we do not control K through 12 in Colorado. The local districts do. 178 locally elected school boards have more control. They have direct responsibility for the performance of the schools in their districts. Doesn't mean that we have to stay completely away from it, but we have to remember that they are in control. And we have schools that are challenged, are looking to turn around in their performance. The feedback that I'm hearing is that this is another layer of bureaucracy. We're going to take 144,000 of those taxpayer dollars and inject Colorado Department of Education and really our voice into how those districts act on their turnaround plan and try to improve performance, not only at the school level, but down at the student level. And I would ask you to join Representative Priola and I in voting against this bill and respecting local control, not issuing another mandate, and certainly not spending another 144,000 taxpayer dollars on this mandate. Ask for a no vote.
Representative Melton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I rise in strong support for House Bill 1376. Members, I'm one of the members that wasn't too far outside of high school here in the chamber. And I remember when I was in high school at the time, when I was at high school, I went to Thomas Jefferson High School, which was at the time the most diverse school in the state, TJ. But the problem at TJ was, although the school was diverse, the classes weren't. Based on which middle school, based on basically which zip code you came from, that determined what kind of course you were placed in, whether it was a standard course or whether it was an advanced placement course. And I remember being a student in my sophomore year and realizing that the classrooms weren't representative of the school. It weren't representative of the achievement that those students would be able to attain based on their skill level. And so I had to test to get placed into advanced placement courses. And out of 160 students, I was one of 2 African Americans that graduated from the advanced placement courses. That is appalling when we're promoting and throwing up this big banner of diversity. So I rise in support of having this report being done, so that way we can make sure that our schools are placing students based on their achievement, not on their zip code, placed on what they can accomplish, not where they come from. So members, I ask that you support this bill because, again, this is about opportunity. This is about whether or not a student's going to be able to get into college and reach those next goals and attain that next level of success. Again, I ask for an aye vote on House Bill 1376.
Representative Peniston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And colleagues, this is absolutely local control and state working together at its best. Best thing the state can do for us in the local communities is to give us the data we need to make the right decisions at the local level. And that's exactly what this bill does. It gives districts the data to look at, and sometimes problems are right under our nose and we don't see it till we're presented with the right information, the clear data. And that's what this does. It just says, here's the data. Maybe there's a problem, maybe there's not, but pay attention. So this is perfect.
Representative Schaefer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I worked at the Colorado Department of Education for 20 years. For 10 of those years, I was accrediting school districts and looking at the achievement gaps, but we did not look at the opportunity gap of enrollment in the core courses. And I think that this is a very positive addition. When are we going to get serious about closing the achievement gap? We have had a persistent, perceived achievement gap, and now we're calling it an opportunity gap also, for 30 or 40 years, and we still have it. But let's start by doing something new with this, looking at the core courses enrollment and making sure these students, not just ethnic and racial minorities, but we have disabled students, we have gifted and talented students who sometimes are not even enrolled in these classes. So let's get serious about this, this bill, and I ask for your support of 1376.
Representative Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and members. Thank you for the thoughtful dialogue on this issue. You know, I shared a little bit of my personal experience in school in committee, and I think it's actually worth sharing here on the floor as well. You know, having gone to one of those school districts that is the bottom 5 performing in the entire state, and having, I remember very clearly, my 11th grade honors English class. CSAPs, or whatever they were called back then, were coming up, and the principal coming into my honors English class and saying, "We are counting on you. We are counting on you to raise the scores for the rest of the school." And to place that kind of pressure on kids was unfair. I understood why he had to do it. I understand the difficult place we put teachers and administrators in when we have such a focus on high-stakes standardized testing. I get it. But for kids like me that did well in school, but never performed well on standardized tests, that's not fair. This data will start allowing us to have these real conversations about why we put certain kids in certain classes. When Representative Wilson ran his advanced placement courses pilot program, I shared how my school offered far more remedial classes than we offered advanced honors or AP classes. At least 3 times as many remedial classes as we did advanced courses. When that's the reality, we're not challenging kids. We're not giving them the opportunity. The other piece of this that I want to speak briefly to is I think one of the most important facets of the data that will come from this bill is the data around English language learners. In my school, English language learners had their own hall. They were segregated from the rest of the school. And there were instances in which we had kids in those ELL classes that were still not proficient in English by the time they graduated. They were simply pushed through the system. Instead of allowing them the opportunity to participate in courses with other kids who would have enriched their ability to obtain English proficiency. This is the kind of data that we need. This is the kind of data to have these conversations and to start talking about why certain kids are segregated, why certain kids are placed in certain courses that ultimately inhibit their ability to succeed. Ask for an aye vote.
Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Representative Moreno, I certainly appreciate the stories that you shared with us, and you certainly identified the problems. And I guess that's my concern on this bill. We know what the problems are. It's kind of like on resolutions. We get up here and do the resolutions, and I come up with this phrase, what are we going to do about it? We know what the problems are in these schools. What are we going to do about it? And I submit to you, colleagues, that we will not legislate changes in the high schools in Colorado. That's leadership that will make the difference in those high schools in Colorado. And Representative Buckner knows very well that the principal is the instructional leader in a building. As that building goes, that's the way the leadership goes. As the leadership goes, so goes the building. So this information that we're talking about gaining is simply looking at getting information, getting data through CDE to point out the problem that we already know exists. So what are we going to do about the problem rather than getting more data and then having these conversations? And Representative Moreno, when you use the phrase, we'll have those conversations, we won't have those conversations here. That will be the building level that takes care of that. Colleagues, I would ask you, are you comfortable with CDE telling you who ought to be enrolled in what classes in your neighborhood schools? I'm not. I am not. That's the partnership between the principal, the instructional leader in that building, and the counselor who places those students in those classes. If you have a class that's 90% minority and the high school doesn't reflect that demographic, that's the counselor's job. That's not the government's job to do that. Who gets into classes is totally dependent upon the principal and the counselor. End of that story. We cannot legislate our schools. What will we do with the data? We'll spend the money for the study, give the data to the schools, and we'll still have schools that do not meet the criteria we expect. Colleagues, the only way you make a difference is to hold your local schools accountable. Hold your local leadership accountable. As a prior superintendent of schools, I can tell you if those problems existed in my school, I would either correct it with my instructional leaders or I'd be searching for another job. I did not look to the legislature to solve that. That was a local issue, a local school issue, a local board issue, and because of that, this bill is not necessary. If it addressed the accountability of the leadership in the buildings, then maybe I'd be in favor of it. But it doesn't address that. We make no changes to the leadership. We make no changes to the ones who enroll the students in those courses. And we talk about the students are getting the short end of the stick. And that's not why I spent 40 years in education. I spent 40 years in education because the kids were important. And it's time we focused on that instead of the data. Kids are not data. What's happening to those kids is not data. What's happening to those kids is lack of leadership. And I would ask for a no vote on this.
Representative Hamner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And colleagues, I ask for your support of this bill. I think this is a critical step in closing the achievement gap that we have had in Colorado and is not closing. This is not a mandate to school districts about what to do. It is information that informs their goal setting. Right now, the department correlates student performance on assessments by subject area. This provides additional information to districts and to schools about what courses and what classes the kids were enrolled in, and how does that now correlate with their achievement. So, a critical step in improving student achievement across the board and in closing the achievement gap. I ask for your support.
Is there any further discussion? Representative Buckner.
This is an important bill, and I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion of House Bill 1376? Seeing none, all those in favor of House Bill 1376, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1376 is adopted. Mr. Kohler, would you please read the title of House Bill 1360? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Assistant Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I move to proceed out of order to House Bill 1387.
You've heard the motion of the Assistant Majority Leader. House Bill 1387 will proceed out of order right now. Mr. Kohler, would you please read the title of House Bill 1387?
House Bill 1387 by Representatives Szabo and Fisher, also Senator Schwartz, concerning revisions of capital-related statutes in the Colorado Revised Statutes in connection with amending or repealing obsolete, inconsistent, and conflicting provisions of law and clarifying the language to reflect legislative intent and current application of the law.
Very good job, Mr. Kohler.
Madam Assistant Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I would like to move House Bill 1387 and the State Affairs Committee report.
To the State Affairs Committee report.
Basically, the committee report is we ran two amendments. One was technical, in nature. We needed to just firm up a few things. The other one was Dora had looked at it late and had just a few technical changes also on their part.
Is there any further discussion on the committee report?
Thank you.
Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of the committee report. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The committee report passes. To the bill.
Thank you. Members, House Bill 1387 is a bill that came out of the Capital Development Committee to clean up parts of statute. These pieces of statute have not been updated for 35 years. And as we know, it's always a great idea to revisit the statutes and from time to time in order to make sure that our processes are accessible, organized, and clear. And that's what we decided to do in House Bill 1387. There were a few changes and add-ins, and there were a few things that we took out. Capital Development serves many different departments and higher ed institutions, and some of them were doing, different things, and we needed to make sure that our statutes line up with how the process is being done now in the 21st century as opposed to 35 years ago. I ask for an aye vote.
Representative Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I concur in the motion for an aye vote on House Bill 1387. It's a privilege to run this bill with Representative Szabo, and I know that Representative Vigil also, as a member of the Capital Development Committee, had a lot of input into this bill and this process, and really would like to applaud the work of staff on this. This is really staff's bill. We are standing here really just representing the tremendous work of Esther Van Morik and Corey Donaldson and the other Capital Development staff here that have painstakingly gone through the statutes to find old, antiquated language, update that for modern times, and make some changes that I think are substantive in nature that will help streamline the approval and prioritization process that we go through in the Capital Development Committee. I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1387? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1387. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. House Bill 1387 passes. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to lay over House Bill 1360 to the end of the special orders calendar.
The House Bill 1360 will be laid over as requested by the Majority Leader. Was that? Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1382.
House Bill 1382 by Representatives Young and Wilson, also Senators Kerr and Roberts, concerning delivery of online education within the public elementary and secondary education system.
Representative Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the report of the Appropriations Committee, the Education Committee, and House Bill 1382.
Thank you, Representative. To the Appropriations Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Appropriations Committee added the appropriations clause to the bill. I ask for your aye vote.
Is there any further discussion of the Appropriations Committee report? Seeing none, all those in favor of the Appropriations Committee report, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. Committee report is adopted. To the Education Committee report, Representative Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The report of the Education Committee is actually a strike below amendment. So members, when you look at the Education Committee report, you are actually looking at what the bill is now. Just for your background, we had a task force that worked on this issue. People who have expertise in the area of online education came together at our request. The 4 legislators have worked for 7 weeks since the end of, or beginning of February, essentially, and issued a report with 5 recommendations. The initial bill, as introduced, had some concern, particularly around the 4th recommendation, and so the strike below was an effort to address those concerns, open up and provide more dialogue for people, and allow us to move recommendation 4 forward in a way that would honor the intent of the task force, but still include a number of other stakeholders so that they would be involved in the decision making. I ask for your aye vote.
Representative Wilson, any comment? Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Education Committee report. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. The Education Committee report is adopted. To the bill.
I'll interrupt.
Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, this bill has been an interesting one. If you haven't been lobbied on it, you haven't been present in the last few weeks. And just to give you a little bit of background, the online community, the online world in education has changed dramatically. For those of us that are old enough to remember education in 1991-92 in the state of Colorado, we were supplying online distance learning via satellites. There was a FarView project that included 4 southwestern states, and we worked at providing quality online education for our students. Now, as I mention that, and you consider what we are giving to our students today, you'd laugh at what we considered to be quality at that time. Well, the history of this particular bill, it's been 8 years since the quality issue of online has been investigated or looked at by this particular body. This discussion this year has been just as contentious as it was 8 years ago. And I am sure as this is addressed in the future, it will be contentious once again. But I want you to understand what transpired. In order to look at the particular situation that we're dealing with, Representative Young and Senator Kerr, Senator Roberts, and myself put together a task force, which, as you all realize, is not easy. Several of you in this body I know have been coaches in particular sports at one time or another, and you know what happens when you pick your starting 5. The second 5 and their parents all come up to you and say, why weren't we selected to play? But you select that based on the ones you feel will do the best job, and that's what transpired there. And not unlike being a basketball coach, I put 5 players on the floor and you lose control for the next 32 minutes. You have no control over what goes on that floor. That's kind of the way it is with a task force, but we were blessed with good people on that task force. This bill with the strike below addresses the concerns that we heard in testimony. We heard a lot of concerns in testimony, both from some members of the task force as well as from those outside. The major concern that we heard was we weren't on the task force. That was the major concern. So the amended bill addresses that. So we set up an opportunity for CDE to set up a larger task force to address that. And the bottom line, colleagues, is we're looking for as many quality offerings to our students as possible. That's the bottom line. It really doesn't matter to me whether that's for-profit, non-profit, no-profit, whatever profit, as long as it comes to students in a quality package. That's the key. So the piece that we have here today addresses that issue, and I believe that it will move forward, and with the opportunity to have that larger task force, that some of those issues on the providers and so forth will be addressed. And the bottom line to keep in mind here is what is in the best interest of our .58 K-12 students in Colorado. So with that, I would urge an aye vote or refer to Representative Young if he has comments.
Is there any further discussion? Representative Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also believe that this bill addresses the issue of quality. I appreciate that Representative Wilson has stood firmly with me in demanding that we have a quality educational system. This K-12 online system is only but about 2% of the entire system, but decisions that are made about it impact also the quality for the other 98%. And so we're not about not dictating any particular type of service delivery, but quality is the key. And so anybody that pushes back on this, you need to ask them, is the issue around quality or is it something else? If they're asking you about something else, you need to factor that in clearly. If they actually have a proposal that improves quality, we're willing to listen. That's what this bill does. I urge an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Representative Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had some concerns about this bill. Online education is extremely important to me. I think that's a big part of the future of education in our state and in our country. But I was a little bit concerned that the people who are involved in the day-to-day of online education feel that they have not participated at an equal level in the whole process involved to get to this bill today. And so, I understand all the work that has been done, but whenever you have your providers sort of feeling like they're on the outside of the process and they're having trouble with the bill, I think we need to step back and say, can we take another look at this before we make a wholesale change in the way that we change the authorizing statutes for online education? So I respectfully request a no vote on this bill.
Is there any further discussion of House Bill 1382? Seeing none, Representative McNulty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I didn't have the opportunity, as I mentioned yesterday, to sit through the testimony that was offered when the bill was first heard. So I was playing a little bit of catch up when this bill was up in committee yesterday for action. But one of the things that I have heard since in visiting with some folks who are interested in this bill who had testified earlier, didn't hear them, had a chance to visit with them yesterday after we voted on your bill, is that they still have concerns about the pilot program. And they said that those concerns had been expressed to both Representative Young and Representative Wilson. And so I guess my question, as we're discussing this on second reading, is are you aware of those concerns, and do you think that those are concerns that can be addressed?
Representative Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Representative McNulty, I've got plenty of gray hair, and I guess Representative Wilson could probably resemble that remark. And it was our perception coming out of testimony in the Education Committee that there really wasn't concern with the recommendation 5 on pilot projects. But if there was and we missed it, my apologies. This bill is headed to the Senate, and Senator Kerr and Senator Roberts, I'm sure, would be open to amendments there if needed to address the concerns in Recommendation 5. And so, if we missed it here, we can address it there, bring it back, and concur.
Okay.
Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And one other thing, colleagues, that I feel compelled to share with you. Being new to this process and being new to working with task force and so forth at this level, one of the things that I wanted to make sure that we had on that task force were independent thinkers, people who would stand up and express their opinion, and if they differed with someone, would stand toe-to-toe with them and debate those issues. And I really felt like we had some folks that did that. So as we went through this process, it was not one of those things where everything's predetermined. They had some interesting conversations in the task force, and we'll continue to do so. The key to this particular bill, I think, is because of my background in rural and small schools, online education is the key to being able to serve those students in rural, remote, small school. And this is a step in the right direction to ensure that quality, to address the authorizer's issue. And as I talked about earlier, we addressed that in the strike below so we can actually have that process with a larger group of people addressing those issues. And those issues, I'm sure, will continue to come up as this bill moves forward into the Senate. And I look forward to working on that side of the building to make this an even better bill. So I would urge an aye vote.
Representative Labuda.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, I rise in support of this bill. I have a personal story. I have a niece who's now, I think, close to 30. She grew up in a very small South Texas town, took a lot of online quality courses. She is now a medical doctor doing research on infectious diseases, and I'm not sure whether she's now at Johns Hopkins or in Africa, but she's all over the place. I can't speak highly enough of the benefit of online courses, especially for rural areas. Thank you.
Representative Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It may be the last time that I get to come to the well and speak on this unless we come back from the Senate. I just wanted to finish by telling the members of the task force, there were seven of them, thank you for your hard work. They worked hard, and they all have additional jobs, but took time out of their professional lives to come in once a week and diligently carve out and craft this set of recommendations. And as Representative Wilson said, this was not easy work. They were toe-to-toe and discussing these things, but came out with consensus on these recommendations. And this bill is an effort to honor all that work. I thank them for that.
Seeing no further discussion, all those in the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1382. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1382 is adopted. Mr. Kohler, would you please read the title to House Bill 1380?
House Bill 1380 by Representatives Gardner and Fields, also Senator Nicholson, concerning the Colorado Coroner Standards and Training Board.
Yours, or is that Carol's?
Representative Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1380 and the Appropriations Report.
To the Appropriations Committee report, Representative Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Appropriations Committee report did the necessary appropriation. Ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Appropriations Committee report. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. To the bill. Representative Fields.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Representative Gardner for all of his leadership and hard work on this topic. And not as it relates to coroners, but also as it relates to the work that he has championed for our disabled, for our victims, and just for justice. It's been always a joy to work with you. You're my colleague and my friend. Members, Representative Gardner and I have been working on this topic for 4 years, and I think we have finally gotten it right. If you know anything about the qualifications for coroners, it's they have very few qualifications. You have to be above the age of 18, and you have to be able to pass a background check. And when you think about what they do, which is that they establish the cause and the manner of death, that's a pretty serious responsibility that they have. So this bill addresses 3 major components that is going to help with our coroners. One of them is that it requires our AG office to provide legal services. It increases their hours of in-service training from 16 to 20, and it provides greater oversight from the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. So I do urge an aye vote, and I do want to thank Representative Gardner for all of his work and partnership on this bill.
Representative Gardner.
Thank you. Representative Fields has covered the bill well, and I want to thank her as well. It has been a joy and a pleasure to work with her on this and several other issues, and to have Representative Fields as a friend and colleague. We ask for an aye vote.
Seeing no further discussion, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1380. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1380 is adopted. Mr. Kohler, please read the title to House Bill 1139.
House Bill 1139 by Representative Priola, concerning funding public schools based on the calculation of average daily membership.
Representative Priola.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I move House Bill 1139 and the Education Committee report and the Appropriations Committee report.
To the Appropriations Committee report.
Members, they simply appropriated money from State Ed Fund. Ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion of the Appropriations Committee report? Seeing none, The question is the adoption of the Appropriations Committee report. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. To the Education Committee report, Representative Priola.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, in education, we adopted one amendment that moved back the second year where there was a dual possibility of counting the old way or the new way. So all the new counts will be, the new system will be fully implemented. Hard start date of the third year. Ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion of the Education Committee report? Seeing none, all those in favor of the Education Committee report, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. To the bill, Representative Priola.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I think this is a good bill that will shepherd in a 21st century method of counting those who are attending schools, which school, charter, online, so on and so forth. As we live in a very mobile society, I think it's a better way to do things going forward, and ask for an aye vote.
Representative Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do join Representative Priola in supporting 1139. Average daily membership is the future of, I believe, K through 12. We've got to move away from the count day. The stories that we hear from different schools, different districts about the incentives that are provided to get kids into a building, into a brick and mortar setting on a particular day so that the dollars can flow to the head count. That, I believe, is an outdated, archaic, and inefficient way to fund education in the K through 12 environment. We have had a lot of conversation about average daily membership on different bills that have come through. I applaud Representative Priola for continuing to carry this issue. I don't know that we're going to solve it this year, but I think this bill is a step in the right direction. Ask for your support, your aye vote.
Representative Peniston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, I ask for a no vote on this. This is something that all of the education entities do not support. School boards don't support this. The executives don't support this. CASE, CASB, CEA doesn't support this. What we all agreed to, or many of us agreed to in 1292, was a study, because that became a real issue to the school districts about how they were going to accomplish this. And they feel like this is onerous. This particular brand, this particular way of going about it is onerous. And so what we settled with was we would have a study that they would all be included in as to how to do this right. This is not a study. This goes way beyond that and way beyond what the school boards and CASE would like to see. So I ask for a no vote.
Is there any further discussion of House Bill 1139? Seeing none, the question is the adoption of House Bill 1139. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, please say no. No. The noes have it. House Bill 1139 is lost.
Mr. Kohler, please read the title of Senate Bill 117.
Senate Bill 117 by Senator John, also Representative Fisher, concerning the reauthorization of the regulation of real estate appraisers by the Board of Real Estate Appraisers through a recreation and reenactment of the relevant statutes, incorporating no substantive amendments other than those approved during the first regular session of the 69th General Assembly.
Representative Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move House Bill 117, and there are no committee reports.
To the bill, Representative Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a very important bill, although it seems rather complicated because of its length. What the bill does is it actually recodifies the Board of Real Estate Appraisers statutes, which are currently in sunset because when we adopted the bill in Senate Bill 13155, a date was missed, and the sunset, the program, entire program went into sunset. If we fail to change this date, the entire Board of Real Estate Appraisers will go away on July 1st of 2014, which would, I think, create havoc in the real estate industry. So I ask for your favorable adoption of Senate Bill 117.
Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 117? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of Senate Bill 117. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Senate Bill 117 passes. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of Senate Bill 29.
Senate Bill 29 by Senator Newell, also Representative Fisher, concerning the establishment of a paint stewardship program for the environmentally sound disposal of post-consumer architectural paint in connection with making appropriation.
Representative Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move Senate Bill 29, and there are no committee reports.
To the bill, Representative Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This Senate Bill 29 sets up what's referred to as a product stewardship model for the manufacturing, distribution, and final disposition of architectural paint. This was an idea that was brought to the legislature by the American Coatings Association and paint manufacturers all over the United States. It has the support of the Colorado Association for Recycling and the Colorado Product Stewardship Council. In essence, what the program would do is to set up a cradle-to-grave system for monitoring the disposition of architectural paint, and in particular, unused architectural paint. Sets up a program for recycling and proper disposal of unused architectural paint. About 10% of all paint that is sold in the United States ends up going unused. So there's a large problem out there. I don't know how many of you are like I, but I have probably half a dozen or more cans of unused paint in my garage, and sometimes, depending on which community you reside in, it can be a problem disposing of that. So this, under this bill, the paint manufacturers are stepping up and taking responsibility for that cradle-to-grave disposition of architectural paint, and I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 29? Seeing none. Oh, Mr. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A little sleep deprived, just like yourself today. Members, I'm going to ask for a no vote on Senate Bill 29. I agree that we can't just be throwing these cans of paint in the trash and ending up in the landfill, but the majority of municipalities out there have some place where you can actually go and drop it off. Does it take a little work to do that? Yes. But the private sector has already got ways that they can go ahead and handle this without mandating a new program. And what this new program will do is we actually did some math statistics in committee, and this will raise the price of paint anywhere from $15 to $13 million a year in the state of Colorado to institute a program where there's actually no statistics to show that we're actually going to get that big of a benefit. So we're going to say, let's raise the cost of paint by $10 to $13 million initially. There's no cap, so that $10 to $13 million a year can grow. Where did I come up with that number? Well, I was told that we sell 15 million gallons of paint a year in Colorado, and they said starting off right now it'd be about 75 cents per gallon. So when I've heard that, oh, your numbers are totally wrong, well, that's simple math, not Common Core math. And so that actually comes out to be about $13 million a year that we're going to have to pay an extra paint cost in the state of Colorado. None of the other states around us have this program, so it makes it pretty easy to anybody to go buy paint somewhere else. But the key point is it's not actually going to somehow incentivize more people to recycle by doing this. That is why I'm a no vote. There's no reason we need to raise the cost of paint in Colorado by $13 million initially, not have a cap on the expense, so this can continue to grow year after year after year. They said, well, they can recoup reasonable costs. What are reasonable costs? Those are all arbitrary. This will grow every year, and that is why I urge a no vote.
Representative Swam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members,
I also urge a no vote. Kind of what occurs to me is here we go again. This sort of looks to me like the tire recycling program. Are we going to have to run another bill on this every year because it's not working? And the other thing I'd say is here we go again, raising fees and in effect another tax. I was in the Health Insurance and Environment Committee on the day this bill was heard and heard testimony from proponents. And a fellow who is involved in recycling paint right now, a private company, said that really what we need is a process to kickstart this market because there's not enough product out there. And okay, let's grant that. I think we don't want to see this paint going into landfills, although I don't think it's really a problem if people are simply storing it in their basement, like we do. We've got a bunch of paint stored down in our basement. It's just sitting there. It's not hurting anything. But it's an odd industry where when you want to take your paint in to have it recycled with this company, they don't pay for you to bring their product to them so that they can turn around and process it and resell it. You've got to pay them to take the paint off your hands. And what they do is they filter it, refine it, and blend it into, say, a few, maybe 50 colors, 50 shades of colors, which even though when you go to a new paint dealer, there might be thousands of shades of colors, they say the vast majority of people are only interested in just a handful of these colors of latex paint. And so again, granted, and then they can turn around and sell this paint, this recycled paint, which is really no different than new paint, at a dramatic discount from new paint. And their main market for this recycled paint is Habitat for Humanity, at least is one of them. So he said that we need something to kickstart this industry because, again, the main problem is they can't get enough supply of this product. So with that in mind, it occurred to me, okay, well, let's grant that we need to kickstart this market, but why do we need to have this program run eternally? As President Reagan said one time, the only thing closer to eternal life this side of the grave is a government program. So with that, I move Amendment 007, and Ron, please display that.
L007 has been moved and is properly displayed. Representative Swalm to the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, this amendment simply says that in 5 years the program will be repealed. It's not going to be eternal. If the program works and creates a viable market for this product, why do we need to continue the program? Let's end it. You know, it's got lots of costs, especially, the minority leader pointed out that it's going to raise the price of paint significantly in the state for consumers. You know, in effect, this is a regressive form of taxation. Those people who can least afford to pay for this are going to be the ones who are going to suffer the most from this, basically a new tax. So let's end this thing. If it works, great. It won't need to be continued. If it doesn't work, it ought to end anyway, because it's not creating the market that the proponents say that it's going to create. So I urge that we vote for Amendment 7 and repeal this thing. If it works, the program's not needed. If it doesn't work, then let it go away. Thank you.
Representative Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I ask for a no vote on this amendment. I did have the conversation with Representative Swalm in committee about that the paint recycling industry in Colorado definitely needs a kickstart because it's a great way to handle unused architectural paint. But that's just one of the many benefits that I think we'll see from this bill. It's not the only benefit. And I believe that once the paint manufacturers have invested in this product stewardship model in Colorado, they certainly aren't going to want to see it go away immediately upon its creation. And so I just ask for a no vote on this.
Representative Swan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, members, I'm puzzled by the use of the term immediately. This is 5 years. The way this program has been set up, it's effective, it's repealed in 3 years, excuse me, 3. But if the program works, it's not going to be needed any longer. If it doesn't, let's get rid of it. And I think this is a reasonable amendment. Give it a time to work. And if it doesn't, let's get rid of it. We don't need to continue this bureaucracy and cost to consumers.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L007? Mr. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, we just heard why we should vote against this because we need to kickstart the paint recycling industry in Colorado. So we're going to come down here and add $13 million initially of fees on the people of Colorado to kickstart an industry, and we don't even know if this will actually kickstart the industry. We just assume that if we dump a bunch of money into it, that it will work. This actually says that, okay, let's come back and look at it at this date, and if it's working, the industry has been kickstarted, it's working great, then we can continue the program at this time. But if it's not working, then we stop it and we say, okay, we unfairly put $13 million of extra burden on the people of Colorado, and guess what? What we did didn't work, so Mulligan, let's not do this. It doesn't get any more common sense into saying, well, we're not going to be so arrogant to say that our program and our idea is so good that it's never going to not fail. This says we're going to come back and take a look at this, and if it's not working, we stop. And if it does work, we can continue the program. We're talking about real dollars here, folks. We're talking about $13 million more that you're going to be putting on the paint industry here in Colorado, just in the hypothetical that we're going to somehow kickstart an industry. Members, this is a common sense amendment to come back and take a look at this program again in the future to see if it's working. This is why I urge an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Representative Labuda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I urge a no vote on this. And as for the statements that were just made, if it's $13 million, if I buy a can of paint, a gallon of paint, it'll be 15 cents or less for me, which I wouldn't notice. I urge a no vote on this because we need to get this in shape and to continue it.
Seeing no further discussion, Mr. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Representative Labuda, we need to make sure this continues even if it's not working?
Representative Labuda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It will be working.
Seeing no further discussion on Mr. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Labuda, maybe I was reading a different bill than what you were reading, but I didn't see any language in there that there was any guarantee that this was actually going to work. But you are now down here guaranteeing to the people of Colorado that if we add $13 million initially of increased costs on paint, that without a doubt we are going to kickstart the paint industry, and there's somehow your personal guarantee that this is going to work. Would you be willing to maybe backfill personally the people of Colorado the $13 million a year if this doesn't work? I mean, you've given us all the guarantee that this is going to work, so.
Representative Labuda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Minority Leader, if I do buy a lottery ticket and if I do win the lottery and if it's more than that amount of money, I would backfill. But we heard testimony from the paint folks themselves. They're the ones who want this. I urge a no vote on this.
Seeing no further discussion on Amendment L007, the question before us is the passage of L007. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. No. L007 is lost. To the bill. Seeing no further, Representative Swalm.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, another concern I have about this bill is that there's no cap on this tax. It simply turns it over to the department to decide what the tax is going to be, and that's a concern to me. So with that in mind, I move Amendment 5005 and ask that it be displayed.
L005 has been moved and is properly displayed. To the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, this is an amendment that simply caps the fees. These are based on fees that are being charged in other states, kind of averages of states where this program is in place already. You can see what they are. They vary based on the size of the paint that's being purchased. And I think that we ought to have it in statute rather than relying on the department to do this. And if it needs to be changed, I think it should have to come back to the legislature and change it there. So I urge that we put a cap on these charges. And this, again, this is not to exceed this amount. So I urge a yes vote on Amendment 005.
Representative Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members asked for a no vote on this amendment, and Representative Swam and I have had a discussion about this, and I respect the intent of this amendment, but there currently are 7 states that have adopted product stewardship model on the recycling or product stewardship for unused architectural paint. And the cost of running a program in each of these different states is different. And so since we don't have a program already set up in Colorado, we really won't know what the cost of the program will be until it gets up and running. But there's language in the bill that specifies that the cost that the paint manufacturers are only able to add to the cost of the paint in an amount that is necessary to run the program. And I'm not sure that because Colorado is a rural state, maybe much more rural than some of the other states that have adopted this model, we don't know yet whether the transportation costs and setting up collection sites in far-flung places around the state are going to cost more. I would assume that they will. So we don't know what the cost is going to be, but there are safeguards in the bill to address that issue. I ask for a no vote.
Representative Swam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Fisher makes a good point about how Colorado has so much rural territory here, very sparsely populated. And yet this bill, if you look at it, mandates that these recycling centers be spread all over the state. And those centers could be quite expensive to manage. And again, I don't think we ought to be penalizing rural parts of the state if it turns out that it's more expensive out there. So I urge a yes vote on this. I think it's appropriate that we put a cap on this, and if the If it needs to be changed, they have to come back to the legislature and justify that. So I urge a yes vote.
Is there any further discussion on L005? Seeing none, the question before Mr. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Each producer shall remit to the Paint Stewardship Program the cost of administering the program, and they shall add that amount to the Paint Stewardship Program to the purchase price of the container. So there really are no guardrails on this bill as far as how much they can charge. We talked about these costs in committee, because to me, I might want to hire somebody and pay them $30,000 a year to run my stewardship program, but somebody down the street has a family member and they want to pay them $50, so now all of a sudden that stewardship program costs a little more than the other one, or I want to have a nicer facility than somebody else wants to do curbside service, heck, somebody wants to do a drive-through to make it even more convenient. There's really no guardrails to actually say how much we can charge and what's reasonable. Now, you have to submit those costs and they have to kind of evaluate it and look through it, but it's still arbitrary. Somebody's going to still be able to argue, yep, these are what my costs were. I should be able to pass that along. There really is no guardrails at all on how much this is going to actually cost and what people are allowed to charge. There again, this is a common sense amendment. Put Representative Swalms on the amendment on the bill, it passes. They decide that, hey, maybe this isn't covering all the costs in the rural areas. They can come back and make that case, and then we can change those costs in the future. But to just put a bill into law with no caps on what can be spent, members, that is dangerous. And that's why I urge an aye vote on Representative Swalms' amendment.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L005? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of L005. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. No. L005 is lost. To the bill. Representative Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I renew my motion for an aye vote on Senate Bill 29.
Seeing no further discussion on Senate Bill 29, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. No. Senate Bill 29 passes. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that the committee proceed out of order to consider House Bill 1360.
House Bill 1360 will be considered at the request of the Majority Leader. Representative, Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1360.
House Bill 1360 by Representative Young, also Senator Aguilar, concerning the continuation of the regulation of home care agencies by the Department of Public Health and Environment in connection with implementing the recommendations of the 2013 Sunset Report by the Department of Regulatory Agencies as modified by the Legislative Sunset Committee.
Representative Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1360, the report from the Appropriations Committee, the report from the Finance Committee, and the report from Public Health Care and Human Services Committee.
To the Appropriations Committee report, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Appropriations Committee simply added the Appropriations Clause. I ask for an aye vote.
Seeing no further discussion, the question is the adoption of the Appropriations Committee report. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Appropriations Committee report is adopted. To the Finance Committee report, Representative Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Finance Committee made some technical changes to the bill around licensing, and so I ask for your aye vote.
Is there any further discussion of the Finance Committee report? Seeing none, question is the adoption of the Finance Committee report. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. Finance Committee report is adopted. To the Public Health Care and Human Services report, Representative Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Public Health Care and Human Service Committee made substantial changes to the bill on a number of areas, and these were primarily around a stay of survey that we are going to provide for the DD community. I do have 3 amendments. Members, I'm going to ask you to bear with me. I need to amend the Public Health Care and Human Services Committee report, and to that end, I move L009.
To the L009 to the Public Health and Human Services Committee report is properly displayed and moved. Representative Young to the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Basically, we're changing some wording here to ensure that we're consistent in the statutes. Instead of referring to services recipient or recipient, we're referring to home care consumer. And then the bottom of the line 17 through 21, or 17 through 20, simply ensure that the work group is providing updates to the Home Care Advisory Committee. I ask for your aye vote.
Is there any further discussion of L09? Seeing none, the question is the adoption of L09. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. L09 is adopted.
Thanks for the support.
Representative Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move L010.
L010 is properly displayed and moved, and this is an amendment to the Public Health and Human Services Committee report. To the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're simply establishing a process here for differentiated fees on the license. I ask for your aye vote.
Is there any discussion of L010? Seeing none, the question is the adoption of L010. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. L019 or 101 is adopted. Representative Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move L011.
Okay, L011 is been properly moved and displayed. Please tell us about the amendment. Representative Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And members, again, I appreciate your indulgence on these 3 second reading amendments. This one, all 3 of these really were a result of a stakeholder process on Monday in which we got a large group together. And this particular amendment really ensures that if a service agency is already certified by CMS, that they don't have to have an initial survey by the department. I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further discussion, the question is the adoption of L011. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The ayes have it. L011 is adopted. So, any further comments on the committee report? Representative Young.
I ask for your aye vote.
So the question now before us is the adoption of the Public Health Care and Human Services Committee report. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. The committee report is adopted. To the bill, Representative Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a long process involving DORA, CDPHE, HCPF, and a wide range of providers that provide services in their homes to those people who are very fragile and in need of services. And it's a complex industry. Clearly, as you've seen from the committee reports in the bill itself, the issues are complex, but I believe that we have moved this issue towards a satisfactory solution, and I ask for your aye vote.
Is there any further discussion of House Bill 1360? Seeing none, the question is the adoption of House Bill 1360. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1360 is adopted. Mr. Kohler, please read the title to Senate Bill 1.
Senate Bill 1 by Senators John and Kerr, also Representatives Garcia and McLaughlin, concerning making college education more affordable by imposing further restrictions on tuition increases, increasing financial aid, increasing operating support for each governing board of a state-supported institution of higher education by 11% in connection with making appropriation.
Representative McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move Senate Bill 1.
To the bill.
Thank you. No, you go.
Representative Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, members, I would ask for an aye vote on Senate Bill 1. This gives a historic amount of funding for our Colorado colleges at $100 million and also helps cap tuition for our students who are currently facing high tuition rates. And this would decrease the tuition rate from 9 to 6%. I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion of Senate Bill 1? Representative Giroux.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, not only will this reduce tuition rates, but this is going to starve the universities and the colleges, because what this bill says is we'll give you this $100 million and we want you to take that, and I like that part of the bill. But the part that it says is you can't raise your tuitions any higher than 6%. We went through this once before. We passed a bill that hit the 9%. There are some schools like School of Mines that opted out and they agreed to not raise their rates, and they did a great job. And they did it just because what the state is doing is the state is going in and you're messing with the businesses of the college and the universities in the state, and then we're not funding them appropriately. Now, I appreciate the $100 million. You know, if we could get rid of this, the 6% and take it back to 9% where it was, I would be very, very happy to vote for this bill. So, gentlemen, would you be amenable to an amendment that takes the 6% to a 9%? Okay, so I'll be a no vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing no, Representative McLaughlin?
No further discussion. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no further discussion, the question is the adoption of Senate Bill 1. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 1 is adopted. Mr. Kohler, please read the title to Senate Bill 150.
Senate Bill 150 by Senators Todd and Zenzinger, also Representative Hamner, concerning the Colorado School Counselor Corps Grant Program in connection with making appropriation.
Representative Hamner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 150 and the report from the Education Committee.
To the Education Committee report, Representative Hamner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Education Committee amended the definition of first-generation students to align with that definition that is used in the Higher Education Act of 1998, and I ask for your support of the Education Committee report.
Is there any further discussion of the Education Committee report? Seeing none, question is the adoption of the committee report. All those in favor, please say aye. All opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. The committee report is adopted. To the bill, Representative Hamner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senate Bill 150 doubles the amount of funding that will be available for the School Counselor Corps Grant Program from the current $5 million to $10 million to support more counselors in our schools, in middle schools and high schools. It's been a very effective program to help reduce remediation rates of students graduating from high school into college and supporting academic achievement in our schools. I ask for your support of Senate Bill 150.
Is there any further discussion of Senate Bill 150? Seeing none, the question is the adoption of Senate Bill 150. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 150 is adopted. Mr. Kohler, would you please read the title of Senate Bill 129?
Senate Bill 129 by Senator Stedman, also Representative May, concerning changes to criminal provisions related to marijuana in connection with making an appropriation.
Representative May.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 14-129.
And the Judiciary Committee report? And did you move the committee report?
And I move the Judiciary report.
Okay, to the Judiciary Committee report.
All this did was clarify that instead of a rubber stamp on a facsimile, that it would be a watermark, so we're updating the statute from the old way and allowed them to use the funds for post-training. I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion of the committee report? Seeing none? Oh, Representative Giroux. Representative Giroux.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So what are we going to do to the rubber industry? I don't understand.
It's not a waste tire bill. Behave.
Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, the question is the adoption of the Judiciary Committee report. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. The committee report is adopted. To the bill, Representative May.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What this bill does is it harmonizes statute for the 18 up to 21 that was not done on the previous for the passage of that when marijuana became legal, and it asked us to regulate like alcohol, and it also defines what paraphernalia is, and I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question is the adoption of Senate Bill 129. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 129 is adopted. Mr. Kohler, would you please read the title to Senate Bill 8?
Senate Bill 8 by Senator Roberts, also Representatives Dorr and Exum, concerning the creation of Wildfire Information and Resource Center and Division of Fire Prevention and Control in the Department of Public Safety in connection with making and reducing appropriations.
Oh, there was, wasn't there?
Representative Dorr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the appropriations report.
There is no appropriations report. I think it's just to the bill.
That's Senate Bill 125, man. Oh, sorry. Sorry, Mr. Chair. My co-sponsor gave me the wrong green sheet there.
My fault.
I move Senate Bill 8.
Okay. Is there any discussion, Senate Bill 8? Representative Dorr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This bill creates a online information center for when wildland fires are happening anywhere in Colorado. People can turn to them, see the status of the fires, progress made on the fires, give information on what is happening with regards to the fires, if it's in their area or even if it's not, and also has other information, educational resources for mitigation and other matters when it comes to wildland fire prevention. I ask for a yes vote.
Representative Exum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a good vote for public safety. Thank you. Ask for aye vote.
Any further discussion of Senate Bill 8? Seeing none, the question is the adoption of Senate Bill 8. All those in favor, please say aye. All opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 8 is adopted. Mr. Kohler, would you please read the title of Senate Bill 189?
Senate Bill 189 by Senator Stedman, also Representative Giroux, concerning a 2014-15 state fiscal year transfer of $9,672,000 from the Controlled Maintenance Trust Fund to the General Fund for the purpose of supporting a fiscal year 2014-15 appropriation for the Colorado Firefighting Air Corps.
Representative Giroux.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move Senate Bill 14-189. There is no committee report.
To the bill, Representative Giroux.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, Senate Bill 189 is the bill which transfers $9,672,000 from the Controlled Maintenance Trust Fund so we can pay for deplanes. I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any discussion of Senate Bill 189? Seeing none, the question is the adoption of Senate Bill 189. All those in favor, please say aye. All opposed, please say no. Well, I'm tempted. Senate Bill 189 is adopted. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the committee rise and report.
The motion is to rise and report. Is there any objection to that motion? Seeing none, the committee will rise and report.
The House will come back to order. Mr. Kohler, please read the report of the Committee of the Whole.
Mr. Speaker, Committee of the Whole begs leave to report under consideration following attached bills being second reading thereof and makes following recommendations thereon. House Bills 1360 amended, 1376 amended, 1380 amended, 1382 amended, 1385 amended, 1387 amended. Passed on second reading in order and gross place on counter for third and final passage. Senate Bills 1, 8, 29, 117, 129 amended, 150 amended, and 189. Passed on second reading in order and revised place on counter for third and final passage. House Bill 1139 as amended, lost on second reading.
Representative Fisher.
I move that the House adopt the report of the Committee of the Whole.
You've heard the motion. There is an amendment at the desk. Mr. Kohler, please read the Priola amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole.
Representative Priola moved to amend the report of the Committee of the Whole to reverse the action taken by the committee in not adopting House Bill 1360 to show that House Bill 1360, as amended, did not fail but retained its place on the special orders calendar and is laid over until April 25th, 2014.
Representative Priola.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I move the Priola amendment that was just read. I think we all got caught napping this morning and would ask that the bill simply be laid over on the calendar so we can discuss tomorrow further. I've spoken to many of you. Ask for an aye vote.
Hold on one sec. I think Representative Priola, you're talking about the right bill. The amendment says the wrong bill, so the House will be in a brief recess as we correct the amendment. Good job, Joel. Back to order. Ron did a great job technically correcting the amendment.
Christine?
Ron did a great job technically correcting the amendment from Joel. It is now properly displayed for us with the right bill. Representative Priola, please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wonder if they should strike out the bill up in the corner, the 13.
Yeah, we'll get the right one.
1139. Members, this is an amendment to lay over House Bill 1139 on the calendar.
Representative Peniston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, you just gotta love this job, don't you? One minute you're down here fighting like donkeys and elephants, and the next minute you're here supporting each other. And I'm asking for support for this amendment because it does give us just a little bit of time to work on this. It's an important issue, and we need a little more time.
Mr. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Priola, if we keep laying it over, killing it, bringing back voting, and keep going there, could we put a provision in there maybe that we take our average daily vote count and decide if...
Representative Havner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And colleagues, I think that was a brilliant idea. I'm rising in support of this amendment, as Representative Peniston said. I think we just need a little more time to make sure we get the policy right, and ask for your support. Thank you.
Representative Szabo, Madam Assistant Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I also rise in support of this. I think looking down the line, and the Jeffco School Board definitely thinks this is a great idea. They already do it, and they think it's a good idea, and it's going to bring us further in knowing exactly where the children are. It's important that we follow where those children are and what school they're actually in at different points, because it's not always kosher to where they are. They come in and go out, and it's important that we follow them. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, the question before the House is the passage of the Priola amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representatives Court, Kagan, Leps, Pabon, Scott, Stevens. Representative Stevens excused and fined $5. Close the machine with 60 aye votes, 4 no votes, 1 excused, and 0 absent. The Priola amendment to the report of the committee of the whole is adopted. There are no more amendments at the desk. Mr. Cole, please open the machine and members proceed to vote on adoption of the report of the committee of the whole. Representatives Conti, Coram, Exum, Gardner, Lee, Landgraf, Navarro, Nordberg, and Stevens. Close the machine with 65 aye votes, 0 no votes, 0 excused, and 0 absent. The report of the committee of the whole is adopted. And one thing, members, given we got through the entire special orders calendar, we will not need to be returning tonight. We will be likely going through, well, we have lunch council tomorrow during lunch, so we probably will break, we will break for lunch council, then come back. So those who are not in lunch council will be able to go get lunch, and the rest of us will have to go to lunch council. Announcements and introductions. Representative Court.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Okay, Finance Committee, heads up. We will, it's not on the calendar, so pay attention. We will be hearing 1374 again because they've worked on it. We had laid it over, so we're going to hear that again. And we are adding a new bill, 1369, so we will be hearing that. Madam Majority Leader, are we pushing back afternoon committees? What time? Do you want to do that or not? I think we should be okay. What do you want?
Let's start afternoon committees at 2.
All right, so since afternoon committees are pushed back till 2, let's go ahead and not have finance start till 12:30 so we have time to inhale a bite to eat. And so we'll start finance. What time is it?
It's 11:30.
Oh, sorry, noon, sorry. We'll start at noon so you can get your lunch, bring it with you, or whichever you want to do. But I think that makes some sense. Outrage. So, but that gives us 4 bills in finance starting at noon.
Representative Singer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Local Government, great work yesterday. No meeting today.
Representative Kagan.
Thank you, members of the public, members of the Judiciary Committee. Do note the addition of House Bill 1390 to this afternoon's calendar.
Representative Landgraf.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. El Paso County. El Paso County, to have your attention. Today, between 2 and 5, in room 109, Education Elements will be there to talk about personalized learning outcomes in blended learning. You can drop in for a few minutes. If anybody else wants to come and learn about that, you're welcome. I'll see you sometime between 2 and 5. I know we have committee, so you can just drop in and leave.
Representative Tyler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have one really good bill up in transportation today. Transportation Committee 1147. 1147. Thank you.
It's not a waste tire bill, right? 67 I'm hearing. I'm hearing 67. You said 47. Oh, it's when the meeting starts, 11:47.
Mr. Speaker, if I can clarify, the meeting for the Transportation Committee starts at 11:47.
Ah, I understand now. Representative Dorr, do you want to be excused for the rest of the session?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. No.
Darn it.
Although it's tempting. Rural Caucus, our last one for the session will be today at noon down in room 107. Please join us to talk about, obviously, rural issues with regards to economic development and such. Thank you.
Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And members of the Business, Labor, Economic Workforce Development Committee, I need you to pay attention. Would we like to go meet now in about 10 minutes? We only have 2 bills to hear, or we want to wait till 2? I need to know by a show of hands. If you're on the committee, could you please stand? If you're on the Business, Labor, Economic Workforce Committee, please stand. Thank you. Representative Szabo, so finish listening. Do we want to meet now or wait till 2 o'clock? All those in favor of now? We will meet in 10 minutes. Thank you.
Right, but they usually have it, because one day they do morning and afternoon. Because I just worry if they're conflicting with other people. I don't think so. Representative Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Not to question the authority of the chair of the Business Committee, but please consider that the Finance Committee is meeting, I believe, in the same room at noon. Thank you.
Let's take a brief recess to figure out committees. Because we need to make sure we have rooms in the offices for people to actually meet. Hold on. We're going to take a brief recess. The House will come back to order. Okay, so everyone knows what's going on. Finance Committee, you're meeting at 12 o'clock in LSBA. Business Committee, you are meeting in LSBB as of right now. 5 minutes. 5 minutes, Business Committee will be meeting to deal with in LSBB. Finance at 12 o'clock in LSBA. Okay, now that we settled that, afternoon meetings are started at 2, as announced earlier. Anything else? Anything? Bueller? Oh. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the House stand in recess until 1 p.m. this afternoon.
Seeing no objection, the House will stay in recess till 1 p.m. this afternoon. We'll see you back here at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning.